Good afternoon and welcome to Catskills Commerce. I'm Ray Pucci, and as president of the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, I am honored and thrilled every day to work with the most optimistic and the energized people that I think I've ever met. Business owners, business leaders, business managers, their staffs, all across Delaware County. And together, we help move our economy forward slowly every single day. The Chamber believes that prosperous businesses support prosperous communities. And in these days, we think healthy communities begin with healthy businesses. We support our entrepreneurs by advocating for public policies that create an environment in which private enterprise may thrive. We promote our region as a great place to visit, to live, to learn, to work, and to play. We create programs that enhance our communities and improve our quality of life. We believe in collaboration, and we believe that the surest way to success is a partnership among business, government, community groups, and education that is mutually beneficial and based in respect, trust, and honesty. Finally, the Chamber believes in the potential of this region, our residents, our institutions, and all who call this special place home, or who have an interest in our collective success. That's the message, that's the purpose of this program, and a lot of things that we do is to help spread the news that we remain a vibrant and diverse place here in the Western Catskills of New York State. Well, thanks for joining me this afternoon, folks. I'm sorry I wasn't here a couple weeks ago, and I want to thank Scott and the folks at Catskills for extending their program, his program, a couple weeks ago, so that I was able to go off and do some other things. One of the things that I did a couple weeks ago, we had one of our state senators, Mike Martucci. Mike has become a friend of me, a friend of the Delaware County Chamber, and most importantly, a friend of Delaware County in his very short tenure thus far as one of our state senators. And I met with Senator Martucci. Together we toured and met with the staff at Delaware Valley Hospital over in Walton, and got a chance also to spend some time with Mike McDonald. Dr. Mike McDonald is the superintendent of schools in Walton, and got to talk with him a bit about some of the challenges that they're facing. And we did the same at Delaware Valley Hospital. And it's that access to our elected officials, and it's that personal relationship that we establish, that I establish, really is critical to helping our local business community. I want to talk a little bit about some things that are happening right now here in the county and nationally, and how they impact us here in Delaware County. And a little bit later on in the program, not too far into the program, I promise, Chelsea Frisbee is going to be joining me on the program, and Chelsea's a good example of some of this new energy that I hope we're all sensing. I'm certainly sensing that's happening here in Delaware County. Chelsea grew up here in the Delhi area. Frisbee is a long established name here in Delaware County. And I want to talk about what she's up to, her business. and also her take on what's happening here in the county. And I'm particularly interested in hearing from her, what made up her decision to stay or to return here to the county. But first, just to catch up on a few things that you're probably seeing some information out there in the news. Let's start with the really good news. Vaccinations, COVID-19 vaccinations are much more available than they were even a month ago when we got together last. And I'm thrilled to hear that. One of the county chamber among other groups, the lack of vaccine, the idea that those of us in the rural areas of New York State were being left out of the vaccination process, and that our residents were being instructed. Remember, we're talking about, for the more senior residents, we're talking about some of the most vulnerable within our population. And they were being told to go to places like Binghamton, Potsdam, Plattsburgh. Yeah, really, I know people who drove to Plattsburgh twice to get the vaccination. Binghamton, Syracuse. And for a lot of those folks, the drive from Walton to Delhi is a major logistical nightmare. Is a real project. So to tell these folks, you got to drive a couple hours or an hour one way, or much more, let alone trying to navigate their way through the online maze of being able to set up an appointment. I'm very thrilled to tell you that there are new vaccination centers. The vaccine is much more available. Now it's available at pharmacies. They didn't just have to be a essential worker or emergency personnel or something like that. And yes, when it fell to, when the age plateau fell, and those almost old guys like me were able to get a vaccine, I was right there, and I got my first dose, and in a couple weeks I'll have my second, and was able just to drive only on. So that's great news for us, and that's the business community, because one of the things that we continue to see is a decline in sales. The state comptroller at the end of 2020, early part of 21, about a month or so ago, and I think I talked about this last month, reported that our sales tax in Delaware County increased over 10% in 2020, and that's a fabulous number. We led New York State in something positive. Yay us! So that was great news. But excuse me, looking at some other statistics, I see that sales at small businesses, and those are the ones that are so critical to us here in Delaware County especially, saw about a 25% decline in sales. Now 25% is significant. I guess when you compare it to the 40% that across New York State, we were doing better again than most, but 25% decline is a significant number. And part of that reason was because businesses were closed, but now that they have reopened, it's still that fear of going out and going into a store. Our retail, our restaurant owners, and all of our small businesses have been incredibly innovative and resourceful, taking care of the public, taking care of themselves, and certainly taking care of their staffs to make sure that everyone is safe. But still, it's going to take a while to build that. All. This is budget our staff. Even the and with one party the National Independent Businesses every year have a small business day in Albany. And we were there virtually. And one of the areas I just want to touch on, I don't want to get into too much detail, but one is that hits every single employer, large and small, all across New York State, is unemployment insurance. Not surprisingly, because of government mandated shutdowns last year and folks being laid off, and the federal government even making it incentivizing laying off people, New York's unemployment insurance trust fund is completely depleted. And New York State even borrowed $10 billion from the feds to pay those claims to millions of New Yorkers. What happens when New York borrows money from the feds, it triggers a unemployment insurance tax rate increase. Now there's two parts, and I don't want to get too technical here, but there's two parts to that unemployment rate, to that unemployment insurance premium. One is based on the company's experience, and the other is just the trust fund. So the governor and the legislature about 2 months ago passed legislation to freeze that experience rate. That's great news, and I think I even mentioned that here. That's really terrific news. The other piece is that premium that all businesses in New York State are now facing because of the trust fund has been depleted. So we have businesses that were closed by government mandate, by government edict, needed to lay off people, brought those folks back by and large, and now are being hit with a increase in their unemployment insurance. That's not based on anything, based on any business condition. So one of the ideas is to, there was about 12 billion with a B that went directly into New York State from the American Rescue Plan. There's about another 10 billion that's being distributed across different municipalities here in New York State. And what we asked for was that a portion of those federal funds be used to replenish that trust fund and reduce that unemployment premium to all businesses across New York State. That's going to amount to tens of thousands of dollars just here in Delaware County. I'm sure it will get into the millions all across New York State that is being pulled directly out of the economy, out of those bottom lines of businesses that right now continue to struggle. One other word about the American Rescue Plan. That's the legislation that was passed a couple weeks ago, signed by the president. Part of that, as I just alluded to, was direct dollars going to municipalities, to counties, towns, and villages all across the United States. Here in Delaware County is going to receive some $8.5 million or thereabouts directly to the county, and another almost $5 million that will be going to the villages and towns here in the county. Now, I'm sure we have some elected officials who are, dreaming of new snow plows, visions of snow plows dancing in their heads, or new roofs for salt sheds, or whatever the case may be. The good news, I guess that's good news, at least for all of us, because the purpose of those funds were to be directed to support our households, our small businesses, our nonprofits, is that those are not eligible expenditures. Let me just read something really quickly to you. This comes from Senator Schumer's office discussing the American Rescue Plan. And if you do a search for American Rescue Plan, it's a New York State and local aid explainer, you will find this, and you'll see what each of those townships are going to be receiving. But there on page 2, it talks about the eligible uses of funds by state and local governments. And they outline 5. Costs associated with responding to COVID-19 public health emergency or its negative economic impacts, including but not limited to assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or to aid impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. Specifically calls those areas out. 2, support workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency by paying premium pay to eligible workers, or by providing grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers who perform essential work. 3, cover revenue losses caused by the COVID-19 public health emergencies. Well, the good news with our sales tax revenue increase, I don't think Delaware County, I don't think any of our municipalities saw revenue losses because of COVID-19. 4, make necessary investments in sewer, water, broadband infrastructure. Great to see that. Funds, fifth bullet point. Funds may not be used by states or localities to cover the costs of pension funds. States may not use to offset a reduction in taxes. So it's going to be up to us to encourage our elected officials to get creative and seek input from all of us as to how those dollars will be spent. Folks, we're talking about over $13 million coming into Delaware County. If there's anything we are, it is creative. And we have things that we can do. Let's make sure that that money doesn't just go to dump trucks and new municipal buildings and things like that. Let's put that money to support those people and businesses that really were affected over this last year because of COVID-19. So during this past year, we saw a lot of changes here in Delaware County. Those changes include an influx of new residents coming into the county, and it was terrific to see. And there's a new energy that I think is building here in the county. We got new businesses. Our real estate market continues to be on fire. I don't think we've seen this level of interest in real estate in Delaware County since probably the mid-1980s. Well before my next guest was even born. And this is all good. You know, things are always changing. And I'm thrilled to introduce to you Chelsea Frisbee. Chelsea, unmute yourself. We're also doing this on Zoom, folks, and you're going to be able to. We'll post today's program on the county's Delaware County Chamber's YouTube channel, hopefully a little bit later on today, and be able to watch this actually watch the radio program. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you. Hi, Ray. It's nice to be with you.
So tell me about your business.
So actually about a year ago, during the start of the pandemic, I had an opportunity to really think about what I wanted to create for myself in my life. And I decided to start my own business and to really launch into being a writer, being a life coach and a spiritual mentor, and specifically working with women to help them move through life transitions with joy and with more ease and purpose. And that's really what I've spent the last year of my life building in these times that we're in.
And are you finding a receptive audience for all that?
I am. Yeah, I'm really finding that people are looking for support, especially in this time of a lot of uncertainty and a lot of upheaval, with changes in job status, with just everything being a little bit more challenging, that having support in how to move through that has been really important for people.
So let's talk a little bit about how you do that. I mean, is this in groups? Is this individually?
It's a little bit of everything. I love working in groups because there is this feeling of solidarity, that it's not just me that's struggling to keep up with everything. I don't have kids, but a lot of my friends who do, and a lot of women that I've worked with are, all of a sudden in the last year have a lot more on their plate. They're trying to be teachers as well as parents, right, and hold down full-time jobs and all of these things. And so to be in a group of women who can share in some of those struggles and who can share what's working for them, how they're finding little moments of peace and joy like that's when a lot of the magic happens in those group experiences. So I do, I work with groups. I also work one-on-one with women. And in that setting, you can really go a little bit deeper into like, okay, what are the specific challenges that you're working with? And then how can we help move you through them? And that, that's just a more intimate experience than what you can do in a group.
I talk with folks who are developing businesses a lot. Let's bring your dog into the photo. Don't hide him.
This is my cat.
Oh, it's a cat. I just saw some fur coming across.
Yeah, he's here.
One of the things that I always love to hear when I talk with any business owner, but particularly folks who are still in that first stages of development. What's your passion? What led you to say, I think I'm going to start a business?
I love talking about spirituality. I love working with women, and I love connecting to places. And so the business that I've created is sort of a merging of all of those things. And so one of the things I didn't mention that I offer are these very customized retreats that right now I have one location. It's in Vermont at a mountaintop cabin. That's just a really beautiful, peaceful place for people to get away to and have a chance to breathe and experience some rejuvenation. And my dream one day is to have a retreat location here in Delhi. My family has a farm right on Route 10, and one day, I don't know when, it could be 5 years from now, it could be 10 years from now, I'd love to be able to host people to that farm, both to connect to, just what my family's tradition of growing our own food, but also to connect to the land, to connect to the place, and to really bring a sense of renewal that comes when, like, we as human beings remember what it is to walk in the trees and walk by the river and be part of the world that is sustaining us. So it's really just became this, kind of this braid of all of these different things that I love, that I have created into now a way to support myself.
And that's really that connection to place that you were referring to.
Yeah.
Because there really is a certain serenity. I know the farm, and there really is a certain serenity about being here. So what you're helping people do is to tap into some of that serenity.
Yeah, exactly. That, I really believe in there being a supportive energy field around us. For some people that they would describe that as God. For other people, it's just a connection to nature, or, sort of a sense of peace and ease, and whatever words you use to describe that. I truly believe that's just a really powerful support system that we have, and that, being able to walk through the fields and feel that connection to, an earth that literally grows our food, whether it's right here in Delaware County or it's millions of miles away, that we're all humans on this earth that does support us. And I've found for myself personally that there's a lot of resource there. There's a lot of strength that comes from that connection.
Chelsea, you referenced the family farm along State Highway 10 in Delhi, but let's talk about your story. You grew up in Delhi, but what's your story? How did you get from growing up in Delhi to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Delhi on Elk Creek Road, and loved living here, I would say, for most of my childhood. By the time I was a teenager, I was kind of ready to leave. I was ready to go out and see a little bit more of the world.
You and everybody else. That's
I know, right?
I understand.
And I traveled a lot in college. That was part of what I wanted to do, was just get out and see the world and see different cultures. And I studied international development in college, and just studied abroad, took a lot of different language and sociology and politics courses. And I ended up in Vermont for most of my adult life, working for nonprofits, working specifically in the sustainable agriculture field for a nonprofit that was supporting farmers. And I loved my job and I loved my community, and I really missed home. I would cry almost every time I left, coming back to visit home and then leaving to go back to Vermont was just really hard. I have a strong connection to my family here. There's 4 generations of us that live here on the farm. I live just off the farm right now, but my grandparents, my dad and stepmom, my brother and his family, including my 2 nephews. And what really changed for me was my mom passed away 5 years ago. And she lived in Delhi for much of her life, and then in different parts of the Catskills. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 5 years ago, and she lived for 5 months. And it was a very transformative experience going through that. And part of what happened coming out of that was just realizing just how important family is in my life, and realizing that I wanted to be closer. I wanted to be able to really be integrated into my nephews' lives. I want my kids to grow up here in Delaware County, on the farm, and to have that foundational connection to nature and land and the tradition of farming that I grew up with. And so I took the opportunity to move back. So I moved back about 18 months ago, and have really put my roots down, and am thrilled to be living here. I can appreciate this area in a way that I couldn't when I was 18. It's like the bike path in Bloomville that I walk on a lot, and the Bramley Mountain Trail, and just seeing really how this area has changed in the last 10 years, and really appreciating a lot of those changes.
Well, and I think those 10 years have given you not only a different perspective, but some distance so that you can look at the area through, it sounds very cliche, but through some new eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been something that I've also been doing with the family farm. So I've plugged into that. It's mainly been run by my brother and my dad. And I have come in with a little bit of a new perspective and some forward moving energy of, what are the things that we could be doing better or more efficiently, or how can we, take advantage of the changing landscape of the area. And yeah, that new perspective is definitely something that I've embraced.
You're listening to WIOX Community Radio. We continue to be live and local here in the Catskill Mountains at 91.3 FM and MTC Cable Channel 20. You're listening to Catskills Commerce, talking with Chelsea Frisbee. And Chelsea, I want to talk about your book that's coming out very soon, but let's just take a look at our weather forecast for the next few days. This afternoon, we're going to have temperatures again, very crazy, end of March, going up to the mid 70s. I'm not complaining. Tomorrow, we're expecting more sun, some partly cloudy skies overnight with highs tomorrow going down, with highs tomorrow going up to the mid 60s. And then on Sunday, some showers are possible in the forecast, some overnight showers, certainly no washout, no rainouts, anything like that, with temperatures, according to the National Weather Service, at 62 degrees on Sunday. And then looking ahead just a little bit into next week, sunny skies again on Monday, with highs going up, starting off cold, going to be down to the upper 20s, but going up to about 50 degrees on Monday, and it looks like we got a pretty nice looking week. Looking at the forecast, I see the sun appearing in each of the forecast days. So that's always a nice thing to see. And of course, on Thursday rather, starts the opening of trout season. And I'm sure our angler friends, I should say, will be very happy to be standing out there in the stream and not having to worry about ice flows coming down. Chelsea, let's talk about this book. You mentioned your mom, and I knew Sue a little bit, but you have a book that is soon to be released that was really inspired by your mom, A Journey of Light. Talk about that for me, to me, if you would.
Yeah, so my mom's name was Sue Woodworth, and she was a lifelong writer of letters and poetry and sermons. She became a local licensed pastor near the end of her life. And when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, she started a blog. And it was a way to really just for her to keep in touch with, like, she had so many connections, family and friends, and she just wanted to communicate because she loved communicating. And it started out kind of just being a little bit of the nitty gritty of where she was going for treatment and how she was feeling. But what it turned into was this really beautiful window into someone who was dying with a lot of intention and a lot of beauty. And one of her last requests was for this writing to be shared more widely. She wanted it to be published. And 5 years later, I have finally been able to grant that request. And so what I did was I took her blog as a starting point, and I added my own reflections of what this experience was like, supporting her through the end of her life. And then interwove some of my poetry, because I'm also a poet, and her poetry, and turned it into essentially kind of a joint memoir that is now available, and has been just a beautiful experience to get to now start sharing this with people, and to hear their reactions of whether they knew her or not. Just this really sort of soulful and spirit-filled sharing that she was able to do.
Well, can you share a little bit?
Yes. I will read just a little bit from the start of the book. This is my introduction. Time and time again, I hear people tell me about the significant impact my mother had on their lives. A friend of my brother's talked to her for only 10 minutes and said the conversation was life-changing. A friend of mine was gathered into her circle of adopted families, receiving birthday cards, holiday cards, and the customary knitted bunny when her daughter was born. She was showered with unconditional love and was invited to one of our last family gatherings during my mom's last summer. Another friend told of the enduring influence my mother had on her life, her marriage, her parenting, and her children. She made me believe I truly mattered, still another friend shared. How was she able to touch so many people's lives? How was she able to mother and grandparent so fully, to love so abundantly, to write so beautifully, to counsel so widely through her ministry, and to rejoice at the little things in life, even in her death? She didn't do it alone. As you'll discover in this collection of her writing, she was a deeply spiritual person, a spiritually large bundle of energy, a do-everything at top speed, loud personality who was filled with compassion, kindness, joy, and a deep love for the sacred that she cultivated all her life through steady ministry, song, and relationships. She shared with us, her companions along the way, a wisdom beyond our human form that allowed her to be fully present to others, making them feel loved and seen, like they truly mattered. Her wisdom is still with us in the words she left behind and in our hearts. This book is an attempt to share more widely, not just her experiences as the veil between this life and the life beyond thinned, but also how she lived. I will live until I die, she wrote during her last few weeks. What strength and conviction she had in the last 5 months of her life and in her whole 60 years of life. She was determined to live fully, sharing her love and care and joy with those around her. The world needs more of her loving compassion, fierce exuberance, tender joy, and mystical curiosity. May this collection be a step in that direction.
Lovely.
Thank you.
And I think you captured, your mom's essence in some ways in that. That's lovely. How can folks, if folks are interested in learning more about your book, where can they go and purchase a copy?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now they can go to my website, which is my name, chelseafrisbee.com, /books, and they can purchase the book right from there. I'm also going to be hoping to get it into some of the local bookstores. Actually, that's one of the things on my to-do list after this show is to take it down. Will Outson at Main Street Cards and Gifts has offered to have it in his store, and then I'd love to just get it into some of the other great local bookstores around here. But for right now, my website is the best way to find it.
Wonderful. Chelsea, let's talk about, let's get back to your business. You're one of the groups that essence of place, that connection to place that you talk about, I think is really an important element. And you work in partnership with some other local groups. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the organizations I've started partnering with is the Upland Center, which is a nonprofit organization based in Walton. Mm-hmm. And they are a retreat center. They host groups that are seeking renewal and learning and growth. And they're really looking to empower social change makers and also provide restorative care to those who care for others. So there's a lot of alignment in, my mission and their mission. And one of the first ways that we've started partnering together is by offering a free monthly gathering. It's a women's circle, and it takes place right now outdoors, socially distanced, but at the Upland Center, which is just a gorgeous place. It's called a cherry grove, this beautiful knoll with these big cherry trees. And the first time I was there, I felt very called to, I was like, this place was made for groups of women to gather here and be connected to land and each other. And so Renee Hardenkamp, who's the environmental director there at the Upland Center, and I have started offering a monthly women's circle, really as a place to come together in connection to each other and to the place. And so we got one in before the winter outside, and then we transitioned to Zoom for the winter because it's a lot easier that way. But we're about to move back outside, so we are holding a women's circle next Saturday, April 3rd. And I believe we're full actually, but we do have a waiting list going on, and that information is on my website as well. But we're going to be doing these every month, really just as a way to build community around, how can we support each other during these challenging times, and also get to enjoy, this beautiful place that we live in.
I saw in reading something about the event that's going to be next Saturday, your women's circle, you said, bring a journal and a something to write with.
Yes, so I incorporate journaling into some of my work because I'm a writer and because it's such a tool for me. So what we do is we spend some time doing like a grounding practice or a way to connect to nature and to where we are. Renee is a yoga instructor, and so we'll do some sort of a starting meditation. And then in order to kind of get the juices flowing, I ask a few journaling prompts that are, we have a different theme every month. So last month we were talking about transitions because we're, coming into this transition into spring, transition out of a pandemic winter, which has, been a little bit unique in the way that it has isolated us. And I have felt for myself a little bit of that, like, oh, there's a lot of outward energy happening now with being able to open up a little bit, just with being able to go back outside and start to see people more. And so that's something that we focused on last month. And so I'll ask a series of questions for individual journaling, and then we have a discussion around it. And so it's sort of a tool to get started and to invite reflection that then people can go back to later as well.
Chelsea, I think that you are in a lot of ways part of that vanguard, if you will, of change that's happening here in Delaware County. You spoke before about that desire to return, and I think part of that is that even though you didn't use these words, I think you were connecting to your own place back here, back home. And family. What do you see happening? Give me some of your observations that you have seen being back here now for the last 15, 18 months. What are those changes that you see, and where do you think we're going?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've really appreciated is, just like the farmers market. It's so vibrant in Delhi, and seeing that community of younger farmers who are finding new outlets for,
like your brother,
like my brother, like my family, that this is, it feels like it's so much part of our history, of this region, of so much of the tradition, and so much of that like revitalizing energy that's happening, that I think builds that connection to place. And so that's something that really excites me, is to see just how many vendors are at the farmers market, how many, new food producers, how many people are really connecting to this land and this place that does sustain us, and like the power of what happens when you actually eat food that's grown by your neighbor and grown from, the soil that's under your feet. I think this is also part of, just my background professionally and as a kid who grew up on a farm. So I could get really excited and talk about that for a long time, but that's a huge piece of it. I think there's also, that it almost feels like, with new people moving into the area in the last year, but also just with, I have friends who have also moved back, who grew up here and have moved back in the last few years. It feels like some of that younger energy with a lot of creative ideas, right? With like, let's think about how we can create communities that are supportive in ways that we need to be supported as humans. And that means like having a place for a poetry reading, or, a dance party. I'm thinking of some of what Bushel offers in Delhi, the artist collective there, of a place to gather and a place to be creative and joyful humans. And I feel like that is only going to keep expanding as we come out of the winter, and it almost feels like people come out of the woodwork, and you realize like, oh, I met someone the other day who's a documentary maker who's focusing on mental health, and who's new to the area and who doesn't have a lot of connections. And I was like, oh, I can think of like 5 people that you should meet, and that you can work together on, creating these things that I think just have a lot of potential for our community.
What do you think that mechanism is to help make those connections and to keep everyone engaged? Because you're right, we have seen many, hundreds, we think, we don't really know, people who have come into the area over the last several months. And you talk about the farm market, and I go to different farm markets around the county, including like the one in on Wednesday afternoon in Delhi, and I stop and I look around. I'm like, I don't know anybody, which is an odd sensation for me to have in Delhi. But I think that speaks to our strength. And so how do we make sure that we keep these folks who, you have, like you said, there's 4 generations that are here on and around the farm. So you have very deep roots. But folks who are just, the part of that exodus that came here looking for a safe haven, don't have necessarily those connections, don't have those roots yet. How do we help them establish those roots?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to mind when you were talking was to be able to have gathering places, right? And I think that small businesses are a huge part of that, building a connection to the local bakery or, their favorite restaurant, that having I think the connection that comes with knowing your neighbors and knowing, who the people are in your community who are like integrally connected to you, that feels like such an important piece of that whole equation is building just authentic connections and having places to gather and know each other, and that there's differences, right? There's differences in me having really deep 8-generation connection here and someone who moved here 6 months ago, and that there's opportunity, there's incredible opportunity for collaboration and connection, no matter what your background is. So yeah, I'm really excited to be part of it.
Terrific. Chelsea Frisbee, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. How can folks find out more about what you're doing?
They can go to my website, chelseafrisbee.com. There's lots of information there about events that I'm holding in the future. I also offer a free coaching call. It's 30 minutes. It's a great way to get to know each other and help you move through whatever it is that you're working with. And they can buy my book also on the website. And I'd love to connect in whatever way feels good.
A Journey of Life by Susan Woodworth and Chelsea Frisbee. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. And we're gonna talk some more, because I want to be able to pick your brain as we continue trying to make sure that all these folks that we've been able to attract, we keep, to create that much more vibrant environment here in Delaware County. Thank you so much for being a part of our community and being on Catskills Commerce this afternoon. Oh, and one other thing I should mention, you mentioned to me that you're going to have a program here on WIOX.
Yes, I will be with one of my childhood friends, Anna Januszewski, who also moved back recently and grew up here. We are starting a program. We'll be on Wednesday afternoons at 3:00. Probably won't start for another couple weeks, but we're going to be talking about wellness, about mindfulness and self-care and mental health, and sort of all things related to those topics. We don't have a name yet, but it's coming.
Terrific. Well, we're all looking forward to the start of that program. Chelsea Frisbee, thanks for joining me this afternoon, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Ray.
And thank you for joining me this afternoon here on Catskills Commerce. I hope you learned a few things, maybe are inspired, or maybe at the very least, just feel a little bit better about the future of where we live. I know I certainly do. Coming up next is Scott Boggs and Catskills radio program, so stay tuned for that. As for me, I will be back in 2 weeks, promise, with a new edition of Catskills Commerce.